Rain drummed softly against the wide windows of the Reed house, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the night. Inside, the air was thick with quiet, almost too thick. It pressed down on Lucas Reed like a heavy blanket he couldn't shrug off. He sat at the edge of the staircase, knees pulled to his chest, staring down at the living room below. 4 years. 4 years of silence. Not after the accident, not after the funeral, not after every therapist, every hopeful try again, every gentle attempt from his father. Silence had become his shield, a language all his own, and for a long time it had kept the world at bay. It was safer that way, safer than trying to explain the storm inside him. But tonight, something felt different. A shadow moved across the polished hardwood floors, not his father's. His chest tightened. The shadow lingered near the kitchen doorway, hesitant, careful. It belonged to Clara, the woman who had arrived 6 weeks ago carrying nothing but a suitcase and a gentle smile. She had stayed because she wanted to, not for money, not for convenience, and certainly not for fame. She stayed because she understood quiet, the kind of quiet that wasn't empty, the kind that carried memories, pain, and hope all at once. Lucas had noticed her from day one. The way she hummed softly while she worked, a melody that seemed to soothe the air itself. The way she never forced him to speak, never demanded more than he could give. The way she treated the house and him as if both were fragile, sacred things to be handled with care. There was a softness in her movements that drew his attention, even as he fought to remain invisible, even as he told himself to stay in the shadows. His father, Daniel Reed, was late, always late these days. Work consumed him, but he had learned, at least he tried, to balance it for Lucas. That balance was delicate, fragile, a careful dance between responsibility and the quiet grief that clung to the house like mist. Lucas watched as Clara carried a tray of steaming tea across the kitchen. She hummed the same soft tune she had hummed the first day she arrived, a melody Lucas didn't recognize but somehow felt like home. He felt his chest ease just slightly as the sound settled in him. The tray wobbled, a cup tipped slightly. She cursed softly under her breath, and for a moment, Lucas felt a spark, something he hadn't felt in years. Concern. Without thinking, he moved, just a little, just enough to steady the tray with his small hands. Clara looked up, startled, and for the first time, she saw him. Really saw him. The boy who had stopped speaking, the boy who had retreated from the world, the boy who had become nothing more than a shadow of himself. He didn't say a word. He didn't smile. He just held the tray steady. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly, fragile, human. Lucas nodded. That was all. But that small gesture, it was enough. The night stretched on. Shadows deepened in the corners of the house. Lucas went to his room, but sleep did not come easily. His mind churned with the images he had been avoiding, the faint bruises he had noticed on Clara's wrists, the way she flinched when doors slammed, the tremble in her hands when the phone rang. He didn't understand it fully, but he understood enough. Someone had hurt her. Someone had made her afraid. And he wouldn't let it happen again. The next morning, the world seemed sharper, colder, brighter all at once. The sunlight filtered through the windows, casting pale golden streaks across the kitchen floor, making everything feel almost painfully real. Clara moved with quiet care, flipping pancakes and humming softly under her breath, a gentle rhythm that seemed to fill the otherwise heavy silence of the house. Lucas sat at the counter, coloring quietly, but his eyes never left her. Every tilt of her head, every slight sigh, every careful motion pulled at something deep inside him. His hands moved with purpose on the paper, but his mind was elsewhere, racing and alert, feeling an unfamiliar pull of protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. Daniel arrived late, his suit damp from the rain, the familiar scent of wet earth clinging to him. He greeted Clara with a tired smile, a polite warmth, oblivious to the tension radiating from Lucas at the counter. The boy's small body was taut, his muscles coiled, every nerve on edge. He watched her intently, and though he didn't speak, the concern in his gaze was clear. A quiet, simmering awareness that something needed his attention. It wasn't until the tray slipped that Lucas's instincts fully kicked in. Clara gasped as the knife she was holding wobbled dangerously, her eyes widening with a flash of panic. Without hesitation, Lucas leaped forward, his small hand steadying hers under the sink. Time seemed to stretch for a heartbeat. The knife nicked her finger, a drop of blood appearing instantly. Lucas froze, his chest tightening with a sharp, instinctive fear. He stared at the cut, his heart hammering. Clara flinched, pressing a towel to her finger. Her calm voice trembled slightly as she said, "It's okay, just a little cut." But Lucas could feel it, the tension coiling in her shoulders, the subtle quiver in her hands, the quiet edge of anxiety hidden beneath her words. Her sleeve had slipped back slightly, and Lucas's gaze fell on the fading bruises along her wrist. Pale yellow shadows, old and quiet, but enough to make his chest ache with a mixture of anger, sadness, and fierce protectiveness. He reached out, small fingers brushing gently against her skin, almost reverently. His touch was careful, deliberate, heavy with unspoken meaning. He didn't speak, but the weight of his gesture carried 1,000 words. Concern, warning, empathy, a promise to defend. Daniel stepped into the kitchen just then, pausing as his eyes took in the scene. He froze, caught between surprise and disbelief. Lucas, the boy who hadn't approached anyone like this in years, was standing there, hand extended, eyes locked on Clara with unwavering focus, protective, alert, alive in a way Daniel hadn't seen in a long, long time. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized the depth of the silent bond forming between his son and the woman who had quietly entered their lives. That evening, the phone rang. Clara's hand shook as she picked it up, her voice faltering under the harsh, threatening words she heard. The voice on the other end carried a weight of cruelty, old memories of fear and past pain. Lucas watched silently from the hallway, every sense sharpened, his small body rigid with determination. His chest thumped with anxiety and fierce resolve. He didn't fully understand all the words, but he knew the intent. He knew danger when he felt it. Then, as Clara's voice wavered, Lucas moved forward, stepping between her and the world. The air felt heavy, electric, almost holding its breath. His small frame radiated a mixture of courage and fear, trembling yet unflinching. And then he spoke, his voice breaking through years of silence. "Who hurt you?" The words were small, trembling, but they filled the room like a fragile spark in the dark. Clara's knees gave out beneath her, and she sank to the floor, tears streaming freely, hot and unstoppable. The weight of years of fear and silence pressed down on her all at once, and she wept as if the world itself had finally released her from its grip. Daniel rushed forward, panic and relief colliding inside him like storm clouds. His chest tightened, his hands shaking slightly as he reached out to steady her. The boy who hadn't spoken in years had spoken. Not with anger, not with demand, but with an instinctive, tender courage that cut straight to the heart. Just a single question, yet it shattered the silence, woke something that had been dormant for far too long, and filled the house with a pulse of life. The next days moved like careful, measured steps through fragile glass. Every interaction, every word, every glance became a dance of protection, patience, and tentative trust. Lucas began speaking more, each syllable weighed with effort and courage. First in whispers, then in short sentences, his voice breaking like sunlight through storm clouds. Every word carried meaning. Every pause held a question, a reflection, a longing. Clara shared her story haltingly, voice quivering and breath catching, about the life she had escaped, the constant threats, the sleepless nights, the fear that had clung to her like shadows. Every tear, every sigh, every tremor of her hands told Lucas and Daniel more than words ever could. Daniel listened, absorbing every detail, his heart aching and soaring all at once. Together, they mapped a plan for safety, legal protections, security measures, and emotional support for each person in the house. Each step felt heavy, yet necessary, a fragile scaffolding for healing. Weeks passed, and the Reed household began to transform in ways that were almost imperceptible at first. Laughter returned in small doses, hesitant, almost shy, but genuine. Lucas began asking for meals, requesting stories, reaching for books with an eagerness that made Daniel's chest swell with quiet pride. Clara sang to him, soft and steady, songs about resilience, about hope, about sunlight piercing through the darkest storms. Every note, every melody carried warmth and promise, and Lucas absorbed them, letting the music knit pieces of him back together. Daniel watched in awe as his son grew bolder, more confident, more alive with each passing day. The walls of grief and fear that had defined their lives for so long began to crumble, replaced with warmth, safety, and a tentative, fragile joy that shimmered like morning light. One evening, rain tapped gently against the windows again, soft and insistent, as if reminding them of the world outside. Lucas looked up from his plate, a small, hesitant smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, the kind that made his eyes shine with newfound courage. "Can we stay like this?" he asked, his voice quivering slightly, laced with hope and uncertainty. "All of us?" Clara and Daniel exchanged glances, their hearts caught in the delicate tension of possibility. Tears shimmered in Clara's eyes, yet her smile was steady, determined, a quiet affirmation of everything they had endured and survived. "Yes," Daniel whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We can. We will." In that moment, the Reed house transformed. It became more than just a building, more than walls and furniture. It became a sanctuary, a place where broken pieces could be gathered gently, where voices could return, where courage, trust, and love could grow in the cracks left by past pain. Years later, Lucas would remember the nights of silence, the nights of fear, the nights when he had felt powerless and unseen. But he would also remember the day he had spoken, the day he chose to break the quiet, the day he stepped forward to protect someone he loved. And in the echo of that moment, he would know a truth as steady as his own heartbeat. Families aren't always born. Sometimes they are built, slowly, carefully, with patience, trust, and love. And sometimes the smallest voice, spoken in the quietest moment, carries the loudest power, changing lives in ways that words alone could never fully capture.